We want to be the best at security. A breach cannot happen. We need to prevent it. The use of Canaries is the least intrusive from an engineering point of view. We should always assume that somebody can come in, that we should always assume there will be a breach. Let's make sure that we have some ways to find us and react quickly. When we did the Slack acquisition, we didn't know that Slack had Canaries in place. They created fake keys, and there were a fair amount of deception mechanism in the environment. That makes me feel more confident in the posture that I have. I protect the device, but if something happens, I'm ready.
So I'm very excited to be doing this call today. So I'm Andy, I'm CEO, co-founder of Tracebit, and we're here to talk all things Canaries, deception, and honeypots. And I'm joined by Didier Vanderbroeck. I'll hand over to you, Didier, to introduce yourself.
Didier Vanderbroeck. I'm the VP of Security at Oleria, which is a startup in the identity management space. So we try to solve the problem about getting your identities managed and providing the right access at the right time to all your employees. I've been in the security space for many years, like 25 years. Before that, I did a long stint at Salesforce where I was leading red teaming on merger and acquisition, then red teaming for the whole company. So I have lots of exposure to the offensive side and the defensive side over the years.
Amazing. Thank you very much. That is an impressive background. And I imagine that's given you opportunities to think quite a lot about Canaries deception, which we'll dig into now. And then is that, so Didier, we know each other from working together with Tracebit. Is there anything you'd like to share about that?
Well, we are a customer of Tracebit, a happy customer. That's one of the challenge that I saw like historically, and we met you, Andy, and the rest of the company in the early days of Tracebit, and we've been with you since the early days. And it's exciting to see like all the development that is happening and the growth of Tracebit for sure. So yeah.
Amazing. And maybe on that subject, how do you think about working with deploying Canaries, deception, like early on in the journey on that subject, because it's something that you maybe did earlier in Oleria than perhaps other security programs would have done?
Correct. We did it in the early days, and we did that system by system. That's as we've been with you guys for a long time now. We didn't have to do everything at the same time. We could do it as things were getting turned on, like Okta Canaries or Kanji Canaries. So all of that came more like as a stage way, which made it a bit easier to adopt for sure compared to somebody that would come now and see the amount of choice. That said, the deployment of the Canary was super simple. It was always a matter of running a script which was given to us, and that is the thing probably where most people have concern about building a deception program, because you need to do it in a smart way. You can't just build your canary and call it my first canary and hope the attacker does not trigger it. So it needs to be, there is some intelligence behind it that needs to be done. And using a company like Tracebit gave me a bit more peace of mind about the way we were doing that and try to bring some value out of it. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to act as a canary in the coal mine and alert in case of incident earlier. And we had that recently on the red team exercise, the the red teamer was accessing some of the resources that were protected.
Amazing, amazing. And is that I'm kind of jumping ahead here slightly, but is that one of the goals you? Is that like a measurement of success for you with Canaries?
There are things that we try to achieve at Oleria. One of them being we want to be the best around security. We are all security professionals that build this company, and we want to be the best at security. So we don't have a lot of external events, which is good because that's where myself, my team are working hard. It's about like, how do we make sure we have enough mitigation in place, we have enough control, that we are confident in our posture. So one way that we know that it works is when we invite a red teamer to attack us. Um, we can see like at least it's a way that we can see, okay, does it work or not? Like if they would never get tripped, it would be difficult to measure the success. How do you know that those deception mechanism worked if it doesn't alert you in the early days? And then we had other events definitely where engineers do things without thinking. They they delete stuff without really seeing, and then the thing is, all the Canaries are looking really like real object in our environment. So they just go and delete stuff, and then I ping them with, "Hey, what did you do?" And they're like, "How do you know?" Sense of it. Well, I have my ways.
And is that for you? Because I think when we talk about the idea of putting canaries into production environments, that's a question we sometimes hear, which is, what if this gets in the way of my engineering team? What if this causes some friction? Is that for you is that still for you a valuable detection to see that that's not a 10 out of 10 malicious event that you've witnessed, but it's still an event? Is that giving you some additional insight into the environment?
One, you should never assume that all your engineers are doing the right thing. There is insider threat. It is 100% true. Lived it in my career, and yeah, it definitely exists. So having even mechanism that alerts you when like, and accident happen, that people go and delete object and don't really realize what they are doing. So having those alerts through guard duty and through pager duty is extremely valuable, because at least I know something is happening in the environment that probably should not happen. Seeing some table getting dropped in our database, well, okay, at least I know that something happened. I can ask, hey, everything normal? Was that planned? It's a good way to keep people honest,
Nice. Okay.
having that
Nice.
visibility. So it did not introduce friction because it's very low visibility for the engineers. They don't really, it's not intrusive compared to all the other security tools that exist. I would say the use of Canaries is the least intrusive from an engineering point of view. Because even if they delete it, nothing happens. Yes, they just get a call from me, but there is the PR doesn't fail, the deployment doesn't fail, and nothing fails.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. It hasn't actually impacted the engineering velocity.
Yeah, correct. Plus the deployment is super easy, so doesn't impact them on deployment phase, because you guys are doing the work. Like, we give you the permission, and you guys are doing the work about deploying the Canaries.
Brilliant. Yeah, that is always good to hear. That's definitely how we've tried to build the system. And then I guess thinking back to kind of your career, which has been a significant one, and deception and canaries and where they've played a role. I'd love to hear a little bit about where you first heard about deception, or when you've deployed it successfully and where you've seen value in it elsewhere.
So really, deception is something that I raised multiple times when I was at Salesforce about like we were doing red team exercise with great success every time. Um, and and I raised that multiple times with the defenders, with the blue team, that you you don't have any system in place that alerts you when we start to leverage use certain AWS function. Like we love to use SSM. That's a good way um, to move laterally. And the fact that there is there was nothing in place really like gave us a great time because we could try lots of things inside of the environment and not be detected as long as we were paying attention at the pace at which we were going. And then when we did the Slack acquisition, um, and we did twice red team operation, and the first time we didn't know that Slack had Canaries in place. They created fake keys, and there were a fair amount of deception mechanism in the environment. And we got caught pretty quickly that way. Within a couple of weeks, we got caught because we accessed keys that were triggered, and that definitely like told me this is the value. This is really how you can find a good attacker in your environment. That's probably the only way. All the other things about ingesting petabytes of log and hoping that an analyst will see the abnormal traffic doesn't work at scale. This is a good way that works at scale if you make it enticing enough. Like if you can see there is a role that looks to be really having access to everything. Let's try to gain access to that role, and in fact, it's a booby trap. So we got caught, and then the funny thing is that a year later we did another red team exercise to validate the fixes, and what we saw was that I saw with my team was very afraid to do anything. So the whole exercise took us way longer because like everything that we were finding was like, hmm, do we want to use that key or will we trigger another alert? And so it took us way longer to be able to find ways that we could exercise things like keys and secret keys that we found without triggering things. So that's a second positive. The attacker needs to move slower and gives you more time to get detected. So those were really good things. I've seen similar things at Heroku, which was another acquisition. They build their own thing about detection, their whole framework, and that told me like this is not the most cost efficient way to build it because they went and built their whole management of Canaries, and several years later their management was asking the question about like why do we really need to pay two engineers time the whole year to maintain that? And I was like, so that led when I met you, I was and you introduced us to Tresbit was yeah, definitely. I don't want to pay two FTEs to maintain that environment. I'm more than happy to pay for an environment like that. So it's definitely helping. It's helping through a fair amount of all compliance too, about like showing that it shows the auditor that we definitely go multiple steps beyond what a startup would do to make sure we have enough detection in the environment. And that's what I've saw. Like I did over 50 merger and acquisition deal when I was at Salesforce. I never saw young startups, Series A, Series B, that were putting as much around like the depth of security. They'll sprinkle a bit of security on top, but they will not think about the whole picture. So here we did that. Like we deployed Canaries on every laptop. Every laptop has a fake AWS credential that are then monitored by Tresbit. it makes me feel more comfortable, because if an attacker comes, I know they will go for those credentials because it's the only credential in clear. So that makes me feel more confident in the posture that I have. And I protect the device, but if something happens, I'm ready. I'm really ready to jump into it. We have the same thing in Okta. We deployed several fake applications. Funnily enough, I told all the people that were assigned those other applications, like finance people, the finance app, legal people, the legal app, don't touch. And I still got our lawyer to launch the app the first time he saw the app. And that's how we knew that it worked. But from the past, like seeing all those companies falling victim of red teams, not even knowing that they had been compromised. Like that's when you realize, like, and at the end, like compared to all the other security control, this is probably one of the cheapest way to get some detection in place, in my opinion. Compared to the rest, it's a bit like, yeah, it's a good way. Yes, it doesn't cover everything for sure, but it's enticing enough. Any red teamer would go for a good role, or like getting access to SSM. It's great. I can deploy packages on every instance. So all those things are enough already to give you some insurance.
Those are some amazing stories and a bunch to unpick there. I think the two things you said to me there, which were around like both detecting the red team and psychologically affecting the red team to make them like slower and less effective, are kind of things we hear time and time again. I think that's super interesting. And then also the kind of the cost of maintaining these programs. I'm interested, is that something you've seen in, because I think something we see and something we feel quite strongly about is like a key failure mode almost for deception programs is where, you know, those FTEs do their 6-month-long project and they spin up deception, they get it in a good shape, and then it kind of just pauses, and then it doesn't change, it doesn't evolve. So you have that initial positive result with the red team, and then they come back and nothing's changed, and they know how to kind of work their way through the maze and skip everything. And we think that should be an ongoing program.
Exactly. Once you know where the Canaries are, like the way they are named, it's much easier to avoid them. And that's the thing. That's why it needs to be maintained. It can't be. It's not a fire and forget. One, environment are not static. Like in our case, we are growing, we are adding customer, and as we add customer, we have customer going through attrition. The Canaries can't stay named the same way because they will get orphaned, and that's where it starts. Yeah, you can't do that. It needs to be an active management of your Canaries, especially in the cloud environment. Yeah, the AWS Grad don't care too much for that. Some of those I don't care too much, but like in a cloud environment, it needs you need to keep your keys up to date. You need to change. You need to change too. You can't just exactly, because you'll get one red team operation. They'll understand where quickly where they are getting burned, and in our case, like with Slack, the second year we knew where not to go, but we were not sure like how much has changed. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think even for us, like new features and building new features out as well is kind of important. You know, we've taken the decision to be somewhat transparent in terms of what it is we might create decoy assets for. And if you're doing that, you kind of need to keep pace and keep evolving, because if if your customers are reading your documentation, your attackers are probably also reading your documentation as well. Amazing. Those are really interesting stories. Thank you for sharing them. I'm interested. You touched on auditors there, and that whole world. Are there any controls or regulations in particular that you would like pull Canaries out for specifically, or is it more around kind of showing the auditors that you know what you're doing and you're putting you're taking security seriously.
Uh, Definitely was helping for PCI. Was helping for PCI to show that and that's um, where we could have credit card data, that we have additional controls to not just like, yes, we have a scene, lots of things that we have a SOC, but in addition, we have extra controls that would alert us in case of compromise or um, unapproved access. Because like one of the things too around PCI is that you need to show that only authorized employees have access to potentially to credit card data, and that one was one way to show where we have other things than traditional things. So we do the same thing on the identity piece, like all our identities just in time, and so that buys you a fair amount of goodwill from auditor when you can show that, yeah, you go above and beyond what the requirement says.
Right. Yeah, I think we've heard that from folks.
Yeah, it was just a way to show like the maturity of your control versus like we are just escaping by and hoping to get through.
I think we've heard from folks as well that cases where there are obviously some regulations that call for deception, but even cases where they don't, it can be kind of valuable to draw the auditor's attention to where you are doing very well versus places where you may be not doing so well, and that's kind of been something we've heard them value before, because there is that quick win. Amazing. I'm interested as well. I mean, we kind of talked about like the value you've got from Canaries, but when you're talking about deception, Canaries to leadership, how are you putting that into kind of more exec level, simple terms to talk about the return on investment, the story there?
Um, so I'm extremely fortunate around that, like in the way that my CEO was Chief Trust Officer at Salesforce, was GM of Security at Microsoft for many, many years. So I don't need to sell him on the value of what we do around security. That said, he had some question because he was getting, so we have, we deployed an access management solution that looks for secrets on disk that are unencrypted. And so he got a fair amount of alerts about that there were AWS credentials on this disk, and he could not understand why, because he doesn't log into our cloud environment. So and that was one of the canaries. So I explained him the why, and I explained him like, so if somebody gets access to your laptop, I think they would go for anything in your credential. They will look for credential like those tools do, and would try to use it. And he understood immediately the value. So I never got like it was an easy sell to explain why do we want to do that. Um, because he's been on the receiving end during all his years at Salesforce. He was on the receiving end of my team destroying the production environment through red teaming, and then he had to go and build a plan to remediate all that. So it was that's being fortunate enough. That said, when I see like I would say the cost of the solution, the time it takes to deploy, which is super minimal. I think each time for each of the system, I spend at most 1 hour per category of canaries that we deploy at max. So it's a very small investment for my part. I have to go from time to time to refresh the canaries when we do too much changes, but it's still very little compared to the amount of time that I've seen other one doing. So the pitch was really, it's a small investment. We should always assume that somebody can come in, that we should always assume there will be a breach. So let's make sure that we have some ways to find us and react quickly. in my past, I did so many operations where we were in the environment for weeks, months, and and the target never discovered anything until we told them. I would never want to be in that position.
Yep. So I guess, yeah. As you said, you're in that kind of fortunate position where you have a the CEO of the company is a very experienced security leader. You are a security company selling a sensitive security product, so it's a high priority for you.
Yeah. So it was an easy sale, so which is a good thing. But I can see that in other corporation that would be a different story. But the angle I would take would be the amount of investment you have to spend to keep the system functioning well, being so low. The return on investment is always, it's like insurance. Yes, if you drive really well, you've never have an accident, and you drive in an environment where everybody else drive really well, like a Formula One Grand Prix, you would never have an accident. You don't need insurance. No, that's not true. This is like you would still take an insurance. It's the same in cybersecurity. We should always think something will happen. I don't know any environment like anybody telling me my environment is unbreakable. Yeah, lost credibility there.
Agree. And I think that kind of assume breach story is one we kind of hear very, very often as well. Why do you think, you mentioned there you've been in environments where you've kind of rolled in and no one's noticed you for a long amount of time, and Canaries are not kind of a default today, I think it's fair to say, certainly on an early like in a security program. Why do you think that is?
I think there is, well, there are a couple of things. So far, there was no real companies providing you that self-managed approach to Canaries. So deploying Canaries is seen as it's an advanced security control, and you'll need to spend a fair amount of engineering time and effort to get it working. It needs to plug into a working detection, working alerting, working response. So people are seeing that, like I would say, on the maturity metrics, that's really for the advanced scenario. And I think that's where you guys come in. It's a bit you break all that. You can bring that from an advanced maturity to an early stage maturity, because you don't need to have all that knowledge. As what would I have to do? I would have to have analyzed all objects and try to figure out, okay, like what is really your naming convention? In a startup, naming convention is very relative. Depends on who's been writing the script. So um, having somebody that does the work did not exist in the past. Or like people like Slack, for example, they build all the Canary from scratch. The bad news is the person that managed that environment and built it left. And so, like, one of my friends took over the security team at Slack and needs to rebuild all that. So I pointed it to you guys. Today there are solutions. Up to 2 years ago, there was no solution. You have to go and do it yourself, and then that leads to what is the ROI? How many attackers will you find? How many attacks will you prevent that way? And lots of people are still more like, instead of assuming breach and I need to be able to have that detection, they are still more in a breach cannot happen. We need to prevent it. And I think that takes a big shift to move to, okay, breach will happen. It may already have happened. We don't know. So how do we find out? And I think that's where it starts to change. When we have companies like Trazebit, that really helps change that conversation. Before that was, yeah, it's a big investment. I agree. It needs to be prioritized. against everything else.
Yeah, totally. I think making sure it's this quick win is what really helps, and then just the kind of the constant barrage of security events, right? That kind of I think are opening more and more people's eyes up to assume breach is really the only way. If you can't control the open SSH's security, then you kind of have to be realistic that someone will get in somehow, and being prepared for it is the way.
It goes really fast. Like I know that 9 months ago, we had a developer that by accident exposed SSH to the internet. Within 30 minutes, we were bombarded with scan from Iranian groups, trying to brute force the environment. So yeah, it goes really fast. It goes really fast those days.
Exactly. One other thing I'd be interested to get your thoughts on is does AI change this at all? Do you think recent advancements, LLMs, and all the excitement around it changes the need, the possibility of canaries and deception?
I think it just increased the need. I don't know if it changes the need. It will increase the need because there are definitely lots of things that I would say from a security practitioner, um, AI systems tend to be over provisioned from an identity point of view. They're like bigger access to more things. Um, and then as we are thinking more about agentic AI. That's like LLM. I'm not too worried about language model. The language model is just a language model. So per se, that's not very interesting. Agentic AI, I can start to see like once you can ask agents to go do things on your behalf, that's where like things will be more interesting, and you need probably more canaries to get that type of detection. Because it will look, it will feel exactly like any other API action, and it will make detection harder. So I think there is some space there, um, where we need to think about like eventually creating fake MCPs or fake agents to try to see like are they getting triggered by another MCP by accident? And so I think it's a new world, it's new capabilities, but definitely I'm more concerned about like definitely there are some folks that are putting together agenting pen testing, like using agents just to run pen test tools and find things faster. Um, the rest, like the LLM per se, is not the things that I worry because it may be more an advantage for us to use that and to like for example to discover faster, like find me my common nomenclature. How do I name things in my environment? Those are good questions for language model. Uh, so I think that AI is more around we need better capabilities. So I'll definitely be looking at you guys to see how you change that space again and bring some canaries in that space.
Awesome. Yeah, I think for us, when I think about valuable detections we make for customers around those kind of those non-malicious events we talked about earlier, right, which is the unusual risky insider behavior, and then the value in those canary detections is that no one should have downloaded this file or used this key because it's a canary. That's the whole idea. And then when I think about us unleashing agents into our systems, I think those detections are going to become even more valuable because the agents are non-deterministic and they are not humans, and you cannot speak to them and understand what they're actually necessarily thinking. So being able to know that you've got at least some flags around your environment that they're going to trip up on if they do stray outside of your expected bounds, I think it's going to become increasingly important.
100%. Like definitely when we see the zero-click attack with using Copilot and email, there is really no action from the victim, as the agent reads the email, take action based on what's in the email, retrieve privileged information, then send it. It's all it's definitely that's where there is an additional need for Canaries there, because like hopefully I can catch it that way, for sure.
Amazing, Didier. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you you taking the time to chat to me today.
Thank you, Eddie. Really appreciate. Have a good one.